if you're lucky to be one of the Nigerians that is in employment, whether it's a 9 to 5 or you have your own business, and I say that because unemployment is at an all-time high. For those of us that are in employment, you know that by the 15th, SACPA is coming. And when I say SACPA, it means that you've finished all your money and you're just trying to just manage till the end of the month. A few of us are able to stretch that naira very well to the end of the month, but a lot of people complain, especially the 9 to 5ers, by the 15th, the whole money is gone. In fact, some people believe that they're just living from hand to mouth as the naira continues to fall and lose value. So we're looking at savings, looking at having multiple hustles, or what can we really do to ensure that we're financially disciplined? And to answer a lot of these questions, I have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Alexander Nwuba, Chairman, Nelike Capital Limited. Welcome to Rubbin Minds.
Thank you for having me on the show.
So you are aware of SAPA, right?
Yes, certainly.
Yes. And why do you think that continues to happen here in Nigeria?
Well, let's start with, you said 15th. 15th is quite fast. Some people have run out of money on the 5th. Many people are really underpaid if you look at the relative cost of money and inflation as well. So what happens is many people have actually borrowed the previous month, particularly for females. They buy clothes on credit, they buy makeup on credit, they buy all kinds of things on credit. And so as soon as the paycheck comes in, they have to pay those loans. And so there's very little left. A general credit rule is that you have to segregate your funds if you can earn enough. 30% maybe for expenses, 30% of things like rent, a portion to be saved, and that's a very important component of it, and the other to meet your day-to-day expenses. So people actually have to engage themselves in managing their income, as you said.
So when you say managing, are you saying that the money is not enough and yet people need to save, or do they mean to reduce some of the things? I mean, food is more expensive now.
Absolutely.
Transport is more expensive. So we're not even talking about the clothes and the makeup. We're talking about the basic necessities. Right, yes. So how does the average Nigerian manage that? Well,
there's several components of that. One is you have to actually increase your income. In many economies of the world that we admire, people actually do two jobs. One job in the morning, one job at night, basically to make ends meet. Couples, husband and wife, are working, and so that's doubling their income. So if they have two jobs each, that's 4 jobs generating their income. Unfortunately, in this economy, the day seems to close at 6 on most jobs, unless you're a bartender or working in one of these night establishments. But a lot of businesses run 24 hours a day. Another key way to increase your income is that many people don't even realize that there are many more jobs out there than they can see visually. There are lots of virtual jobs. If you go to jobs.com and other types of resources, there are lots of online jobs to increase your income. So the first and most important thing is to find mechanisms to increase your income. Later, I'll talk about actually using credit and so on.
It's interesting you say increasing your income by taking on a side hustle or a second job. But as someone who runs an organization or is chairman of an organization, how supportive are employers knowing that their staff are doing other businesses? As you said, a lot of people close at 6 p.m. If you're in a city like Lagos, you're probably spending 2-3 hours in traffic, and you're leaving your house at 4 a.m., 5 a.m. So, one, where is the time? And secondly, are you supposed to squeeze in time during your day working for your day job to try and do this virtual job?
No, the fact remains that when somebody pays you to work from 9 o'clock to 5, they expect maximum output in that job. You have to remember that the nature of business is capitalist, to make as much. So employers are trying to extract as much from their employees as possible. But we have generally a problem in this economy where productivity by itself is extremely low. walk into a fast food restaurant and see the number of employees there. You walk into the place, for example, and you see 16 people serving you, and you wonder how they can actually perform that service in the chaos that appears to exist there. Whereas if you were in the US, for example, that same location would have 5 or 6 employees. And that's really, I looked at that and I said, why? And it came back that we have what is called a lack of productivity in the workplace. And so you need 16 people to do the job of 4. And when you watch those 16, I'm sure you've been to a fast food restaurant, you stand in line and the people look like there's nobody there. They're not trying to move the line as quickly as possible. So that low productivity is a problem in itself. The whole idea of the economy is the productivity. The concept of gross domestic product is the product of all of the work we do as citizens. And so there's a problem. So your employer really cannot ask you to increase your income by taking time from the work he's paying you at. You've got to find a way to manage. That's why I spoke mainly of online jobs as opposed to one job a day and another.
You do need to sleep to be productive. When you speak about productivity, if someone has spent 3 hours in traffic getting there and another 3 hours getting home, I'm not sure they'll have the strength and be as productive for this virtual job. And the issue of productivity, who is to blame? Is it the staff, or is it the fact that the employer is not putting enough things in place, whether it's training or structures or a mechanism to monitor productivity?
When I speak about money, one of the first things I say is, you know, some people work in Lagos and then they want to live in Ogun State, for example. And so did you factor in your expense profile the cost of transportation as a component of your cost of living? So you want a cheap house somewhere at the extreme part of the state, and so you spend 5 to 6 hours driving to work, and that's if you have a car. How many people have cars? And we don't have an effective mass transportation system to support. And that's the kind of support we really need to be talking about, how the social supports exist as opposed to employers supporting their employees to do alternative jobs. Yes.
Housing, because a lot of people in Lagos, for example, live on the mainland or live in Ogun State, right, and they work on the island. Now, we know the price of property on the island is very high and correct, out of the reach of these people. So are you expecting government to provide housing for people who work in private institutions?
Well, you see, the function of government is to provide for all citizens, whether they are public employees or private employees. And so we look at the housing gap of Nigeria, over 80 million unit deficit. Rents are high. Rents are annual, not even monthly, you know, and there's legislation in place to say rents be monthly so that it's more manageable. I did a piece today that said, you know, if you have to pay, you see, one of the problems we talk about, you started with this, is people want to pay their rent, that annual rent, and then it's a month to the rent payment or a week to the rent payment, and they start to scramble for the money rather than saving, you know, putting away, like I said today, 1,000 naira a day, 500 naira a day, 300 naira a day. But it is the function of government, whether you work for the government or not, to provide housing, to provide policies that make housing available, to sanction landlords that collect rent annually as opposed to monthly. If rents were monthly, a lot more people would be able to afford some of the places they need to live in. And then when you talk about living far from work, the fact is that I didn't say everybody should live in Victoria Island. There are places on the mainland that are more affordable, but they're a little bit pricier than these far away places. So it's important for you when working on your finances to ask yourself, what is my transportation cost as opposed to what I'm saving by going this far, but I'm paying a lot more in transportation costs. You've got to balance the numbers. People really have to understand personal finance.
And when you speak about personal finance, you said 1,000 naira, 300 naira, 500 naira. We know that fingers are not equal. Same with wages and salaries. So in terms of percentages, how much should we be saving or aspiring to save, considering that inflation is on the increase and we still have to deal with yearly payments? Some people still pay 2 years, maybe not for the rent, but for the agency and agreement. So what can we be doing in terms of savings?
Well, the reality is that most Nigerians cannot save. More than half of all Nigerians cannot save. So when we talk about saving, we're talking about the middle class option, which is a very small base of the population. And these individuals actually have to think about their personal finance and getting themselves organized to meet their eventualities, these things that come up instantly in unexpected ways. But for the rest of us, that's why I started by saying that we've got to increase our income, not so much savings. Savings is important for most of a small segment of the population, but the rest of the population need to increase their income. And one of the ways is to start a business, you know, some, like you said, the side gig. Where do you get money?
Starting a business, for example, entrepreneurship.
Right.
When we look at the curriculum, this is not taught.
Right.
You don't go to any university and they say, okay, you can get a degree in entrepreneurship. What should the government be doing to ensure that people have that entrepreneurial mindset and don't go through the education system looking for that white-collar job alone?
Well, you know, the idea of university has changed. In the past, we looked at these brick-and-mortar institutions, and based on the premiums we were willing to pay, we assumed we got a better quality education. If you want to learn about entrepreneurship, it's easy. Go online. There are online courses that are free that teach you how to become an entrepreneur. Don't jump into business thinking that business can be done simply by doing it. There are so many components to business that one would not understand. So the university has moved out of those brick-and-mortar spaces that we are familiar with, and they're virtually online. You can learn anything you want to learn online, how to start a business, how to manage a business, because getting into business requires you to understand how to manage a business. It requires understanding how to manage inventory, how to manage admin, to control expenses, etc. So learning, the option for learning has significantly increased. People have to do some work. So
let's say I do this training, and incidentally, I'm an entrepreneur, and I've done quite a number of trainings, but the issue still remains access to funding.
Correct.
And the traditional institutions want to have nothing to do with me because I don't have 40 years of tax, I don't have landed property to present. So why should they invest in my business when there are established businesses that they are begging to take their loans?
Correct. And most of us have seen recently that banks have become more aggressive in consumer lending to individuals that qualify. So the key is to actually qualify. Credit is such an important part of human survival. The rest of the world we look at, the West, for example, most people live off of credit, including their consumer items. So one must learn to build their credit. Today, you can go online and borrow money from many institutions, but that money should not be used for consumption, for buying chicken and moi moi and stuff like that. It should be used to start a small business, even if the interest rate is high. They say the annualized interest rate is 40%. That sounds like a tremendous amount, but that's actually 3.5% on average per month. So if you're selling something with a turnover and you'll have a profit of 5 or 10 or 15%, you can actually pay back those loans. But the key is to pay back so that you can borrow more. Many of us think of credit as a gift, you know, one of those things you have access to, you jump on it and you don't have to pay, and then you've made up with their money. It's your piece of the national cake. That's the important thing to do. Take care of yourself. Government is not thinking about you on an individualized level because government has not functioned the way government ought to function. Government is supposed to start from the local to the state to the federal, but we're all looking to the federal, and the federal has very, very poor ability to see what is happening in small communities.
So let's say I have a side hustle or a second job, I have my 9-to-5 job, but because of inflation, I find that I'm making more money, but I'm spending more money, so I'm unable to save. Now, what else can I be doing in terms of financial practice to ensure that I have more money? Earlier on the program, we found out that a lot of Nigerians are finding ways to change money in dollars and save and get it out of the country. Is that what we should be looking at?
No, I don't think getting it out of the country. I get a lot of people that say to me, you saved my life a few years ago, because I said, take your savings out of Naira, put it in your DOM account, even if it's not earning interest. The exchange rate, the way it's been going, is making you more money than any interest any bank would have paid you. So it's a good idea, if you have savings, to put it in dollars and keep it at your bank. It doesn't have to leave the country. It can stay in your DOM account. Banks are not very aggressive at taking deductions for money you have in your savings account. But back to the most important practice. The truth of life is that every individual, as your wages go up, we tend to improve on our lifestyle. We buy more items. We buy more luxurious items. We buy better watches, better shoes. We buy a car. We do all kinds of things. The most important thing is financial discipline. You don't need a lot of the stuff that you actually buy.
So what about keeping up with the Joneses? I mean, we live in a social media age where the way you post pictures, maybe the car, your house, even determines the kind of deals that come your way, the way you're perceived.
You see, the only thing you have to be perceived right is a nice, clean pair of shoes, a clean shirt for a man, and trousers, and for a lady to dress nicely and decently. Not to follow those people that go to shopping malls, go to the dressing room, wear clothes, take pictures, put them on Instagram, and tell you that they're living the high life. I know lots of people that come to my home or many places, and they spend most of the time taking pictures for their Instagram page or for TikTok and all of that. And if you follow these people, it's just a one-way path to poverty, you know? So we've got to be realistic. Finance requires being realistic. The same way you don't jump on these quick money-making multiple rewarding. I have a friend who called me and he said, you know, I'm very sad. And I said, why are you sad? He said, because he lost all his money. How did you lose your money? Well, I had school fees coming up. I had rent coming up. I had burial that I had to fund. So I took all of my savings and put into one of these things
like
that
Ponzi scheme,
essentially.
Hoping to make a good return
so I can meet all these expenses.
All their bills.
And his wife, and I laughed and I said, but you know, you're in the finance game. How could you fall for that? He says, but I have all these challenges. That's really, when you're under pressure, is the time to actually step back and ask yourself.
And I think a lot of Nigerians are under pressure.
Absolutely.
And now is a good time to step back and stop following the fake lives that we see on Instagram.
Absolutely.
And really practice financial discipline. It's okay to have, he said, that clean pair of shoes, a nice dress, and it's okay not to have all the things that the Joneses have.
The Joneses don't even have them,
They don't even have them. So there you have it. The chairman of Nelike Capital Limited, Dr. Alexander Nwuba. Thank you for being my guest on Rubbin Minds.